Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Flash update. Today's date, March 16, 2026. Time in Texas about 3 p.m. Today in space weather, we had an unexpected M2.7 class flare that did produce a CME that's going to impact the Earth March 19, producing a G1 to G2 geomagnetic storm. Some of the things we'll cover today: Canada, spy and disarm. Ayatollah number 2, rumors. And President Trump. Well, all righty. This will be fun. So let's get started. So I've been bringing out that Canada is in the process of trying to disarm its citizens, and that Canada's also prepping the CCP to bivouac in Canada. That's not going to turn out to be good for Canada, I don't think. So Canada also had put forth a bill, C9, and that was to take away free speech from Canadian citizens, impacting also churches. Now they have a new bill, C22. And this is for stores to store all of their metadata on their customers. You know, like in-house cameras, where did they go, what day they were there, all the customers' private data, how did they pay, when did they pay, what did they buy. For the stores to store that data for up to a year. And it's called the Lawful Access Bill. So the Canadian government can also get private data on its citizens, spy and disarm. Now, I have a Patriot subscriber from Canada, and she said, "We have plenty of guns, and we are not giving them up." So I say, way to go, Canada. You know, a lot of places in Canada are wilderness where people actually need firearms, not only to defend themselves against human critters, but also, you know, wild critters like bears and wolves and so on. So, yeah, I expect that the Canadian people will push back hard on that. Now, Ayatollah number 2 in Iran. You know, first we heard he was hit on February 28 when his father, Ayatollah number 1, was killed, and that he lost a leg but went into a coma, has been on a ventilator ever since then. Then we heard, no, he was actually injured March 9, and President Trump said he might be alive, but he's disfigured. And now President Trump, in the last 24 hours, said, where is this guy? Who is it that the U.S. is supposed to negotiate with? So now a new rumor. We have 2 new rumors. U.S. intel brings out that both the Ayatollah number 1 and number 2, it's believed, prefer men to women, and that procreation was done in an unorthodox way, maybe in vitro, who knows. So we have that. Now coming out from Gateway Pundit, and they say their source is AGGREGATE, that Ayatollah number 2 was injured March 9 in a U.S.-Israel strike, and that a Russian plane came in and picked up Ayatollah number 2. He's in Russia, where he has had successful surgery, but no other details. So that's 2 more rumors about the unknown, unheard, and unseen Ayatollah number 2. And we have this. Oh yeah, President Trump, part of his brilliant strategy to bring down the U.S. number 1 enemy, China, First, take oil away from China via Venezuela, and now he's in the process of depriving China of oil from Iran. And I believe that part of President Trump's strategy to bring down China was also to take away the sanctions on Russian oil to deprive China of that cheap Russian oil. Now, we know that the Russian economy, after 4 years of war in Ukraine, is somewhat on the downside. So Russia needs to make as much money as they can with their oil selling at premium price, which I don't see Russia continuing to sell to China at a reduced price. So that's another punch by President Trump to China. So we have that going on. Now, President Trump has been asking its so-called European allies for them to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. And he accurately describes the U.S. only gets about 1% of its oil via the Strait of Hormuz from the Middle East, while many nations get a high percentage of their total oil and LNG from that area. We understand China buys 80% of Iran's oil. But China has been buying oil from Iran. Iran has had sanctions against it also. So China's also been buying cheap oil from Iran, which we see is also coming to an end. The government, the mullahs, clerics, ayatollahs, the IRGC, are all going to be neutralized. There will be a transitional government assisted by the U.S., and then a democratic form of government, and then sanctions will be removed from Iran so they can sell their oil at premium prices, depriving China in the future also of cheap oil from Iran. So right now, we see no oil flowing across the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump has asked European allies for them to send warships there to assist in the oil flow, which benefits their nations. And guess who said, no thanks, we can't do that. We can't send warships. Well, it might be dangerous. Okay, so no help from Italy, Spain, Japan, the UK, South Korea, the Netherlands, France, Norway, Canada, Australia, Germany, and China. And so guess what? President Trump says, well, alrighty. So these so-called European allies, I think you'll see in the future what alrighty means. We may see a much more current view of what President Trump's alrighty can mean for China, because now we're hearing that President Trump is either going to postpone or cancel his trip to China scheduled for March 31 to April 2, which Xi, who politically is in a weak position in China, desperately needs President Trump to make that trip to shore up the prestige of Xi, who we understand likely could be replaced in the near future. This is because Xi has broken the chain of command in the Chinese military, and Xi has also alienated the CCP. So, okay, that's all going on. And now we have this. We have that, So I believe President Trump lifting the sanctions on Russian oil benefits nations, benefits Russia, but it also deprived China of cheap Russian oil. And we have this going on. Yeah, so President Trump now considers canceling his trip to China. So that's going on. This concludes my flash. I love you, and I'll see you soon.